We have Mr. Matthew Batie. He's a research specialist in clinical engineering. Mr. Batie's presentation will be on biomedical engineering and 3D printing. Mr. Batie?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Matt Batie. I work at Children's Hospital. I've been here about 14 years, double that, working in the Department of Clinical Engineering. I went to Mount St. Joseph and Cincinnati State for my education. I'm kind of a non-traditional student / employee here. Started in this department working on medical and research equipment, and saw a need for a research department for somebody that could develop electromechanical devices and different things to kind of modify their research so that they could use equipment in a kind of futuristic way so that they could try new studies out that weren't currently available on the market. So in doing that, I found that a lot of my time was spent hand making objects or hand making cases, and cutting small plastic pieces out to attach to electronics. And throughout the years, I found that one little mistake, I would have to start over with that device, because a lot of our research study has to do with really small pieces of tissue that we look at under the microscope. So those little small devices are hard to make by hand. So I started looking into 3D printing, and this was about 9 years ago, and got our first MakerBot 9 years ago. MakerBot is kind of a common, well-known name in 3D printing. They've been around for quite a while, and now they're part of a really big company called Strategist, which is also a really good company. So the 3D printer was bought to go in a direction of making devices and making cases and special harnesses for those electronics. But as people found out that we had this technology in the hospital, doctors started coming out of the woodwork with special requests for patient models and different devices for making their job easier and in some cases more accurate and to go quicker. Medical models can be used for planning out surgeries, difficult surgeries for folks that have different issues that haven't been seen before or are seen rarely. Up until 3D printing patient models, people were just using the X-rays and MRIs and all the other imaging technologies that are out there to create digital models so that you can see them on your computer screen. However, those screens are two-dimensional, and some folks have a hard time seeing and thinking in 3D. So using 3D technology or 3D printing technology really helps people put it in their hands and understand, oh, this is what it's like, and this is how far things are from my scalpel or whatever they are doing with the patient. So it helps with safety, it helps with timing, it reduces the amount of time the patients are under anesthesia, and in some cases it actually reduces the amount of surgeries they have to have down the road, so that we're optimizing what we're doing in the operating room. So that's a little basic explanation about myself. I did go to Cincinnati State and got their BMET associate's degree, which also was combined with a co-op here at Children's, and I did all my 5 co-ops here at Children's because I liked working here, and at the time, and still is, one of the best hospitals in the area. So definitely wanted to stick around, and it happened to work out that I was able to get a job here right out of school, and it really was beneficial. So for all of you guys, I know you're young and you're thinking about school and college in the future, I would definitely look at co-oping or interning at different job sites so that you can get a really good understanding of what you're getting into and what it's going to be like on your for your daily job. Sometimes that's hard to see in school when you're just focused on math and you're like, how is this math applying? You know, you go into actual your job site, you might see, hey, I need to know how to use this math for a number of different reasons, and it starts to kind of all you know, come together and you understand it better. So I'm going to switch over and share my screen so that you can see some of the work that I've done. We'll talk a little bit about it, and I'm going to take you through kind of the process as quickly and as you know, as best we can on video. I'm going to start with what my desk looks like. This is what I see right now. As you can see, I love trinkets, and if you can pick out the Star Trek spaceship at the top, good for you. That's great. But yep, that's my chair. Those are my two big screens. I've got a desk. It also goes into a stand-up position, which is really cool nowadays. I've got my pictures of my kids and, you know, things that, you know, drive me to continue to work hard and do what I do. Next picture, you know who that is. I'll just leave it at that. This picture right here is one of our larger 3D printers. That is about the height of a person. That's about 6 foot tall. Inside is where all the magic happens. It's a really, it's heated up inside there, so it's almost like an oven. And so all the equipment and stuff is basically, we call it grown or printed in that chamber. So that's one of them. And then this is a short video, and hopefully it looks like a video for you of the process happening. This is FDM, which basically is melting plastic and squirting it out of a nozzle. You can see that it is squirting it in little patterns there. And this is making a small little tubing interconnector that is designed to connect to a silicone training model. And hooked to tubing so we could put simulated blood inside of the model. So this right now is going through the process of putting down the model material and the support material. This guy does two different materials, like I said, and the model material is the actual plastic, and the reference of the Baby Yoda and Mandalorian being Lego is that this plastic is called ABS, which is the same type of plastic that is used for Legos and a lot of other materials that you have that are plastic. So as you can see, it's laying down layer by layer the model that I designed. And in the next image, you'll see this is about 30 minutes later. It has continued to lay down those layers and is squirting that plastic out. People like to call 3D printing rapid prototyping, and it definitely is if you consider overnight your rapid time frame. The main reason it's so rapid is because I can come up with an idea here at work in the morning and start designing it, and then before I leave, send it to the printer, and it'll print overnight. I've printed things that actually have printed for 3 days straight, very large models. But most of the models are about 8 to 10 hours in time. This doesn't show you as clearly, but the two different materials in this one are white and off-white. The white material can be broken. The support material is there to help keep the model material that you want in place and give it support to print on top of it. So that is either broken away or melted away, depending on the type of material. This is our first MakerBot. I like taking pictures of it mainly because of the quote on there. And I do believe it is from Abraham Lincoln, and it says the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that is absolutely true in the 3D printing field. Your ability to make things is only held back by your creativity and your knowledge of using the tools. So a lot of continuing education and self-education is needed when you're doing this type of thing, because a lot of this stuff, and personally myself, since it was quite a while ago, wasn't taught to me in school at all. You guys in your middle school, you guys might have a shop class or a technology class that has 3D printers that you can use or you've seen in school. We didn't have that. I had to green my screens, and I'm not that old. You know, you might think I am, but the screens on some of the computers in my typing class were green only. They were green and black, and so things have come a long way since when I was in high school. And so a lot of this technology is so new that that classes really aren't formed around it. But the beautiful thing about the internet, and I mean, we're watching this on the internet, it really connects you with a lot of new ideas. And there's so much information out there that you can gather yourself and learn about to access this type of technology. And if you don't have it at your school, you can go to the public libraries in Cincinnati and use theirs. You need to schedule it in advance, but there is some public options out there for you if you would like to get into it. This is just the entry into some of the models I've made. This is a model of the base of the skull and neck, and you can see the arteries that are coming through that the vertebrae there in red. This is multiple different types of materials. So a lot of people think that you just 3D print everything and the final thing that you have is a 3D printed object. But in my case, a lot of my 3D printing is making molds to pour liquid silicone in. And so then it makes a flexible object on the inside. So the red arteries in this were made out of a mold and then added to this model. And then here is a separate model of the same training model, and it has the discs and also has the arteries in it, and just a reduced skull, so you can look at it better. And here it's laid out. All right, so here's another image of the MakerBot's print head moving around. There are belts and pulleys, and all of these parts are controlled by electronics and basically motor controllers that are listening to a computer that is telling it where to move the print head to deposit the melted plastic. Right now, this is going through a calibration to figure out where it is in the system. This next video shows a little bit, it's kind of hard to see from a different direction, from a different angle of the plastic being laid down. And as you can see, it's not moving very fast. So the idea of just pressing a button and a part popping out of the machine and 10 seconds really isn't true yet. Hopefully in the future it is, because that would be amazing. But you can see here that this guy is extruding some white material and is creating what is called a raft. And the raft is what the actual model on part is built on top of, and it helps it stick to the build plate, which is the part that is being extruded onto. Here's another angle of that same machine. It is squirting out that melted plastic. You can see that it's dirty looking in there. There's a lot of heat and other plastics that end up melting to them that give it that discoloration. And just another video of the same thing. And so the printers that I've talked about so far are melting plastic and squirting them out of a nozzle, a lot like a hot glue gun. This printer is totally different. This printer uses UV lasers. So UV is ultraviolet light. It's the light that gives you a sunburn from the sun outside. It is bad for your eyes, and that's why there is a orange case around the top of it to protect your eyes and to protect the liquid that is in that tray. So there is a tray inside here that has a liquid, and we call it a resin. And that resin, if it's exposed to UV light, hardens and turns into a hard plastic. So this model has lasers on the bottom. So in this gray box area underneath, there is a laser that shoots up on the bottom of this tray. And this tray holds the resin that turns into the model. This portion up here is that build plate. So in the last models here, I was showing you this black build plate on the bottom where the plastic is being deposited or glued to. And this guy, the build plate is actually upside down. So the model hangs from the top once it's completed. So this whole portion goes right down into this resin. And this machine can do highly accurate models in lots of different materials. The material that's in there now is a gray material. And there's a clear material. There are biocompatible materials, which biocompatible means you can touch it to your skin and you won't get a rash, or you can use it in your gums for dentistry and placing fillings and all sorts of things like that. And this company, like I said, has just tons of different resins that you can use for printing that have different properties. So you have a lot of different choices depending on what you're trying to make. Here's that same unit with the top open. You can see better this tray down inside and this basic trackway that this comes down. And then this over here is a wiper. So every time it makes a layer, it pulls the build tray up and moves the tray over and slides this wiper across it to clean off the clear window that's on the bottom underneath this resin. And here's an image of it in use with clear material. You can see the wiper moving. You can see the build tray going up, and then now you'll be able to see the laser. So it does that process, however many layers your model are, over and over and over, usually at night. And beautiful thing is when you come in the morning, I like to call them presents. You have a little present. The print went well, and the model's completed. So using that laser, it creates that model, and it almost hardens that resin all the way, but in this case, there's some post-processing. You have to clean it with alcohol, and then you put it in a UV cure box. So it basically is baked in UV light for 30 minutes, and that cures the model. You also see the support structure, and this is it completed. This support structure all is broken away, and you're left with a model that you end up needing to have to sand down or further process based on what you're trying to use it for. If you're trying to use it to make it look really nice, then you're going to spend a lot of time sanding those touch points away. But if it's just for testing and those points don't get in the way, you can break them off and leave it and go right to whatever you're using this for. This was just part of a simulated lung model that we were developing to do some tests on a new device we're working on. And here's a portion of it outside of the box, and just about to go into the alcohol bath to clear away the rest of the resin. And here's a little GIF of it doing its thing in the cure box that is UV light. So it's kind of like black, UV light, it's black lights. If you, especially since we just finished Halloween, you might have seen some of that. It does light things up that have a white tint. So that is why it looks like it's purple in there. But that is it spinning and being cured. Here's a gray part that came off there. These are really, really tiny. Really, really, really tiny spots where we can put little tissue pieces under a microscope. All right, so now we're moving into what I really wanted to talk to you guys about, and I probably need to speed my my talking up here, but I want to take you through how this model was developed. This model is a multi-material model. It uses hard plastic, which is the bone structure there, which is obviously a rib cage, and the red portion is a elastic, which is like a rubber band material that was printed on that printer I just showed you that uses the laser. It does come out clearish, so this is a dyed model, and the reason that this was developed by interventional radiologist asked for a training model so that he could teach his students and his residents how to place wires in the artery, they call them stents, and maneuver around to get to the different places in the aortic arch. So this is called the aortic arch, and at the end of this there would be a heart. So your heart would connect to this, and it pumps all your blood through this, and that's how it gets sent out to the rest of your parts of your body, and through all these other connectors. So yes, so how do you do this? Well, I am going to switch over to some medical imagery, and these three black boxes, you may be familiar with what this kind of looks like, but these are what are called DICOM images, and this is taken either with a CT X-ray, which is an X-ray that spins around and takes a bunch of different pictures and puts them together, or it's done with a MRI system. And both of these systems, to me, are like, have given humans superpowers. So Superman can see through things. He has X-ray vision. Well, this right here is as close as humans have gotten to X-ray vision, because we're right now looking through, and if you look at this section here with the red bar, this is a top-down slices through a person. Like, this person's totally fine, no harm or any of that came to this person, but the images were taken. So it's a bunch of different snapshots that are, basically slices. And I'll go down to this. So this red line right here is a image, and that's this image. So if I go down on this image, this red line goes down too. So we're going through the slices that have been taken. So if those slices are taken properly and they're all put together, I can then go in and do what's called segmenting of the different structures. So for this one, I just grabbed what was really bright that came out of the picture, and that brightness usually comes from bone, a solid material. So in doing that, this is just real quick, obviously, I was able to take that data and then put it all together and create this rib cage with all the different parts. You can see kidneys, you can see some of the wiring and stuff or monitoring systems that we had that were on this patient, and then you can see the heart in there. Yeah, it is all green, I understand, but you can see it's a bit of a jumbled mess in there. And here's that artery that's coming out of here. So you take this data, you export it, and then there's a lot of processing of that information. So what does that look like? This is a cleaned up version of that same set of images you just saw. This is in a free program called Mesh Mixer, and I would highly recommend, if you're trying to get into this, to look into Mesh Mixer. It's made by Autodesk. And there's lots of information out there on how to use it. But this enables you to clean up some of the file and make it a solid, and then send it to printing. And then easiest cases, you can just use this program. But for this, because of the aortic arch wasn't as clear in that image, in the DICOMs, I had to use my CAD program, which in this case is Rhino 3D, to design the actual arteries. So I took that data that we got from the DICOMs, and then I created this tubing to represent that. Because in this case, it was a lot easier and more direct to do it that way. And let me show you what some of that entails as I close things. So this is basically the framework for those arteries. And you can see the red lines here are the spots where that tubing was created. And I'll bring that back on. And then I'll bring back the bones. All right. So once that process is all taken care of, then you have to figure out how you're going to actually print it. That is where the tough part comes in, because some of these materials don't like to print, especially the flexible materials, like this elastic material that the model was created out of. It'll stretch and it'll rip, and so ways around that, you develop a different type of support structure. So if you're looking at this and you're thinking, why is that so much different? Well, these extra portions down in here in red were created to allow it to connect to the build plate and not rip. It's just a better way to do it. So with that being said, I will go back to my pictures. I'll just take you through a couple more, and you can see that this is the hard plastic, and then this is, and you can also see the layer lines. So as each layer is printed, you get a little bit of a line, and so it's pretty the telltale sign of 3D printing. And like I said, it was cleared in the beginning and then dyed. So this is a prototype of the final product, which actually this isn't even the final product. We're still working on this project. But you can see that it's changed over time, and just a better shot. And then here's, I'm going to just go through some quick other things. I talked about mold making. This is a mold, and it's not dirty. That is just silicone, leftover colored silicone. And this was made of lungs for a project we were working on. These lungs in the end will simulate breathing. So you can see that there's tubing, and they are flexible, which I'm about to show here. So this is a foam on the inside of a silicone outer skin. And so that was one of the things you can use to 3D printing with. These are just some other examples. This is a doc that I scanned his head, and we were trying to figure out how we would do a little a cutout for his head if we were going to do something in that manner. So some of his head pops out. And then we have a skull over here on the side that has a flexible brain type insert inside of it. And then something totally different. This is a silicone mat that was created to hold a medical instrument. So all this in black was 3D printed and designed to fit the contours of the medical device. So each of these colors that are sticking up has a portion of the part or the medical device that it holds onto. So in the end, this can be stored in a safe manner um, inside this box. So, and this is sterilizable and transportable and protects the delicate equipment. And we've made a number of those for the hospital so that they can transport different devices around. And this is just some fun. This is some early, hey, I could do this. And, you know, to have a little card holder on my desk with somebody's brain. And then, you know, everybody loves dinosaurs, so I wanted to end it there. This was also printed. And this dinosaur and the print before that all were found online. So you don't actually have to be able to design things to start 3D printing. That's a good way to start. You can find those files online and, you know, get started that way. And as for my pictures, that's it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and return back. Hopefully I didn't go too fast or miss anything that you might have wanted to hear about, but if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Well, I have a question real quick. I wanted to ask you, what's some advice that you would like to give any young person who would be viewing this, who's interested in pursuing a career in biomedical engineering or in any other STEM field?
Yes.
What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I would tell them that they need to be interested in learning. They need to be able to take a challenge of not knowing how to do something and know where or allow themselves to go out and try to find this information to teach themselves a little bit more than what they already had learned. Going into this field, there are tons of different avenues to go into this. You can go through design work, you can go through art, you can go through biomedical engineering, you can go through engineering, you can go to, I mean, there's just a huge amount of options to get into a STEM field. And for me particularly, I came through the device direction and through somewhat of the art direction to get into this field. I wrote down a couple others. Let's see. Yeah, industrial designer, product design, medical illustration. You can even be a doctor and use these technologies. But a lot of times the doctors have other people that are helping them with that. So, but I think the main thing is just having a passion for new technologies and science, and allowing yourself to accept that you don't know everything and that you can find that information and you can educate yourself. It being in school and going to college, and also going online and finding that information while you're actually in the job force. So a lot of stuff too. You just have fun, tinker around as a younger person. You've got a lot of time to figure out what you want to do, and a lot of the software online is free. So if you're looking into this, you can start with many different free software packages and use the library for their 3D printers and really get going and be ahead of the game once you get to college or high school.
Awesome. And then there's one last question in the chat. What was your coolest project that you printed?
Cool. Oh God, I should have known that was going to be a question. That's tough. That's tough. There's a lot of them out there, but I think since this one that I just showed you about the arteries for educational purposes is going to be one of the coolest that we've developed so far. So, but yeah, I mean, it's endless what you can do.
Well, thank you so much for an amazing presentation. We know how it is in person. It's such a wonderful experience, and you did a great job moving it to the virtual format. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. Everybody take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Good morning. Next, we have Dr. Laura Bells. She's a pharmacist in the Division of Pharmacy at Cincinnati Children's, and she's going to be speaking about pharmacy careers. Dr. Bells?
Hi. Yes, so my name is Laura, and I'm a pharmacist here at Cincinnati Children's, and I'm also an educator. So the first thing I wanted to kind of see is, what do you guys think of when you think of a career in pharmacy? You know, do you think of a technician? Do you think of pharmacists? Do you think of someone standing in a white coat? Maybe somebody administering a vaccine? Maybe someone taking a prescription and asking for your insurance information, or maybe it's someone telling you all about this medication that you're about to take. I think oftentimes people think of retail pharmacy when they start thinking about pharmacy. So I'm going to ask you kind of a different set of questions that's a little bit more geared towards hospital. So have you ever actually seen somebody compounding tablets into a suspension? So you're crushing it up and dissolving the tablets, maybe adding a sweetener so that the flavor is a lot more palatable for the patient. Have you ever seen someone taking a single dose tablet? So an individually packaged medication. So there's one tablet in one package, and then putting it into, it's called an automated dispensing cabinet, but they're essentially medication vending machines, something that we use very frequently here at the hospital. Or have you ever seen someone compounding an injectable drug, so something that's going to be given to a patient through their veins? Have you ever seen or thought of someone speaking with a nurse about the timing of medications due to compatibility issues, or maybe there's a drug interaction? Or you know, maybe you've thought of someone speaking with a physician about adjusting a dose based on the drug level. So a lot of times we're monitoring medications to make sure that they're within a safe range, but that they're also in an effective range. So again, the initial, it's just kind of interesting when you sit down to talk with people in person about, you know, what their perception of pharmacy is, because it's a very wide range in pharmacy. And so again, like I feel like the majority of the time people think retail, because that's that's the most common interaction that they have with pharmacists or pharmacy technicians. So maybe it's somebody that maybe you get your prescriptions filled out of Walgreens or CVS or Kroger, and a retail store is vastly different than a hospital experience, and we'll kind of hit on some of the high level kind of global differences, and then I'll show you a video just so that you can kind of get a picture of what it's like to work at Cincinnati Children's in the pharmacy. But in retail pharmacy, you know, you're largely filling prescriptions and counseling medications, maybe fielding some insurance claims, or trying to help patients figure out why a certain medication is approved to be used and why other ones maybe aren't approved to be used. You might be helping patients find an appropriate over-the-counter medication. So maybe they don't need something that requires a prescription. Maybe they can use something that's over-the-counter. And a lot of pharmacies these days in the community have delivery services. So you might be interested in that aspect as well. And usually those are technicians that are handling deliveries of the medications. And so when you think of retail, you know, these are medications that are getting filled so that patients can take their medications at home. They don't have to be directly monitored. You know, their illness or ailment, whatever's going on with them, doesn't require a high level of care. Whereas in the hospital setting, you know, your severity of illness is a lot more acute. So the urgency of the medications is a lot higher. It's something that when they place an order, usually they need it turned around pretty quickly. And again, it kind of depends on why the patient is in the hospital, to kind of base that priority on, and how quickly you need to turn around that medication. Is it, you know, something life altering or not? So in the hospital setting, you have a lot of priorities to establish, and learning about the patient and what they need pretty quickly. So in the hospital setting, you still have order verification, you're still reviewing medication profiles for drug interactions and going over potential side effects, but a lot of times your customer is more so the nurse or the medical care team. A lot, you're not speaking directly with patients the majority of the time, unless you're doing discharge counseling, where you're going over their medications with the patient before they go home to make sure they know what they're taking, how they're taking it, any side effects that they might need. But especially in my role as staffing in the inpatient pharmacy, I'm communicating with nurses and physicians 99% of the time. I don't have a whole lot of interaction with the patients unless I'm out on the floor doing something more clinical related, which again, that could be patient, the majority of the time that's patient counseling. And so from the hospital side, some bigger differences. So you're rounding with patients, physicians, and nurses. You're actually working with the medical team to create that patient care model to determine what the best course of action is for that patient. You might be doing drug level monitoring, so where you're actually looking at the labs to determine, okay, is this medication within the acceptable range? Do we need to increase the dose? Do we need to decrease the dose? You might be doing medication reconciliation, so that's where you're doing kind of a look into what medications the patient is taking, the concentrations, how much, how often, all of that, and documenting it when they're getting admitted. And then again, making sure that that medication history is correct when they get discharged so that any changes are reflected in that aspect. And that's a safety, a mechanism of safety that we've implemented here just to ensure that we have an accurate history of the medications that they're taking. And another, I feel like a question I get pretty often is what is your schedule like in a hospital pharmacy? And it depends. It depends on what area I'm staffing in. Our clinical pharmacists have more of a set schedule, but they're also on call in the evenings. Whereas our inpatient pharmacists have a rotating schedule, which does include weekends. It does include evening shifts as well. There's kind of a mix there. And as you can imagine, we also work holidays. So, you know, the hospital doesn't close for holidays. So we still need our pharmacists and our technicians here. Whereas in a retail setting, you might, depending on the store, if they're not a 24-hour store, you may have quite a different schedule. You may not have to work weekends. You may not have to work holidays. Again, it's very store specific. But those are just kind of a couple common things that I've been asked previously. And so again, hospital and retail are the more common careers in pharmacy, especially in terms of asking what you think of for the pharmacy. So, but there are many other career choices in pharmacy. So you could go into research and clinical trials where they're actually testing medications and coming up with the medications for different disease states. You could go into academia. So you could be a professor. That could be of a technician training school. It could be at a college or university where you're teaching students how to be pharmacists. So at a college of pharmacy, you could go into manufacturing. That could be again, a pharmacist or a technician level, or you could go into more of a regulatory role. So as a pharmacist, I have to follow all the laws that are set by the Board of Pharmacy. And so you have to make sure that someone is enforcing those laws, and those are representatives from the Board of Pharmacy. So you could certainly go into an avenue like that. We also have to compound on a daily basis. So we have to have regulations that we follow to make sure that we're accurately and safely preparing those medications for our patients. So there are numerous regulatory bodies that create those regulations, and they also have people that come out and do audits or trainings to make sure that you're following the regulations correctly and safely again. And you could also work for an insurance company. So these are just a few examples. There are more, but these are probably the more common ones. And so I'm gonna play this video for you guys. This is a video that we did a couple years ago here at Cincinnati Children's in our pharmacy.
In the Division of Pharmacy at Cincinnati Children's, we believe that we are all caregivers. Making children well is everyone's business. For us, that means working together to improve each child's quality of life. We monitor therapeutic drugs and interventions. We're consultants who can share our expertise about how the body reacts to drugs. We answer drug information questions and safely deliver medication to patients throughout Cincinnati Children's.
Our team came up with the motto, your child, their medications, our expertise. And I think it really boils down to our ability to provide pharmaceutical care to the patients along with the nurses, physicians, and other healthcare providers. And I think we do that with a passion.
Much of our work happens in the central inpatient pharmacy, where we have 36 pharmacists and a number of technicians, interns, and support staff. On average, we dispense 4,300 doses and field more than 600 phone calls per day. We have satellite pharmacies in the operating room and the Division of Cancer and Blood Diseases. And we work with investigational drug services and the clinical pharmacy staff, as well as pharmacies at our neighborhood locations.
Before an order is prepared for dispensing or prepared for administration, the order is reviewed and verified by a pharmacist for order accuracy. This includes checking the dose, checking the frequency, checking against any drug allergies, any interactions with other disease states, any other drugs, and just making sure that the drug is being utilized correctly.
Our pharmacy stocks an extensive line of products, including hard-to-find pediatric medications. Many of the oral liquids we use are not commercially available, so we compound the product ourselves and prepare certain products like capsules, eye drops, and nasal sprays.
I'm standing here in front of the clean room now. This is where we prepare all sterile pharmacy products, particularly IV products. We make every effort to provide the patients with the safest product possible. It may take more steps than something we make outside of the clean room, and it may take more time, but it's all to provide the patient with the most sterile, highest quality product we possibly can.
In the Division of Pharmacy, we work behind the scenes to deliver care safely and effectively. We believe our small acts can have a tremendous impact on kids' lives. Together, we have the power to make a difference. Learn more about the Division of Pharmacy at Cincinnati Children's by visiting cincinnatichildrens.org/pharmacy.
We're going to move on to the next slide. I hope you enjoyed that video. You get to kind of see a glimpse into the pharmacy. You got to see just a little bit of the compounding aspect. So kind of going back to what you think about when you think of a career in pharmacy, a lot of people don't think about pharmacists and technicians as the ones actually compounding sterile medications to be given intravenously. So you got to see us all garbed up back in our clean room. You also got to see just a brief photo of compounding capsules. So sometimes if we don't have a medication in the size that we need, we might have to make some adjustments and get creative. So we do actually have to make capsules occasionally for those much smaller doses for our kiddos. So we'll kind of switch gears just a little bit and go into the education requirements. So to be a technician in the state of Ohio, you have to now be registered with the Board of Pharmacy, which means you have to be at least 18 years old. You have to do a background check, and you have to complete an approved training program. And so the board has 3 different registration types. The first one is a trainee, so that's for people that don't have any experience and who are actually going through a training program to become a technician. There is a registered technician, and then there's a certified technician. The difference between the registered and the certified technician, they have different responsibilities and different things that they're permitted to do as a technician. So one example is sterile compounding. So registered technicians are not permitted by the Board of Pharmacy to sterile compound. So they cannot make intravenous medications. Whereas a certified technician, they hold a national certification through either PTCB, which is the Pharmacy Technician Certification Board, or there's also a certification offered through the NHA, which is the National Health Career Association. Both get you the ability to register as a certified technician in Ohio. And speaking for children's specifically, we actually require the PTCB certification here. And that's because they cover more of the sterile and non-sterile compounding, as well as some of the other responsibilities that our technicians have. Whereas the one offered through the NHA is a little bit more geared towards community pharmacy or a retail pharmacy setting. And as far as your training program goes, you could either go through an employer-based training program, but again, that has to be something that is approved by the Board of Pharmacy ahead of time, or you could go through a program that is approved by the American Society of Health System Pharmacists. And so we actually here at Children's just implemented an ASHP approved tech training program in March of this year, and we're hoping to continue to expand it. We've had a lot of interest. So this really gives the opportunity to those that have been interested in pharmacy, but just maybe don't have the background, don't have the training, or the opportunity to get that training. Children's has the training available, and they pay for the training, the cost of the program, in exchange for an agreement that the person would work for a year following the training program at Cincinnati Children's. So it really is a great opportunity. And if you want more information, my information is at the end of this presentation, so please feel free to reach out at any time. There's also training programs offered through the armed forces, and some public schools complete or have training programs that you could complete. The minimum requirement, and I know this doesn't seem like a long time, but is 8 weeks, but I would say the majority of the programs take 3 to 6 months. That minimum 8-week is just a stipulation by the Board of Pharmacy. So I figured I would share that with you guys. To be a pharmacist, it looks shorter, but I assure you it is not. So essentially it takes 6 years to become a pharmacist. So typically it takes about 2 years to do the undergraduate work, the prerequisites that are required. So it's a lot of math and science courses. And then once you're finished with the undergraduate work, you can apply to a college of pharmacy. And that program is 4 years. And then depending on what route you want to go as a pharmacist, you could potentially need to complete a 1 or a 2-year residency following graduation. So to give you an idea of myself, I actually never did a residency because I didn't want to go into the clinical pathway. So I wasn't interested in being a clinical pharmacist. I was more interested in the medication safety side and the distribution side of pharmacy. So at that time, I wasn't required to do a residency. But if I had to go back now, I would 100% do a residency just based on kind of the way the profession is headed. So kind of moving pharmacists more and more into those clinical roles. And then along with that, the technician career is adjusting as well. So as the pharmacists get a little bit more away from the distribution side, the technicians are taking on more responsibilities. So their career is, both career pathways are constantly evolving. And so just real quick, why did I choose pharmacy? When I was your age, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew I was interested in healthcare, but that was about it. So, you know, I kind of started asking questions, kind of looking into things. If I knew somebody was a nurse or a physician or a pharmacist or in the healthcare field, I just kind of started asking questions to see, what maybe I sparked an interest. And in high school, I started working at an independent pharmacy. It was called Ziegler Pharmacy. And that's kind of where I got hooked. So in college, I went to UC and started working on the pre-pharmacy prerequisitions. And then after 2 years, I applied at the UC College of Pharmacy and got in. And luckily, I was able to get an internship here at Children's through college, and then transitioned to a pharmacist. And so I started in our inpatient pharmacy, and then started rotating through our OR, our operating room pharmacy. And then ultimately I moved to our oncology pharmacy. So that was a mix of distribution and clinical. And then from there, I moved into our educator role. So now I do a lot of training and education for our staff. So there's never a dull moment, and there's always different avenues that you can take in pharmacy. So it's not just counting pills, as I feel like I often get that question. Do you ever get bored just counting medications? And I'm like, oh no, I very rarely count medications to put in a bottle. That's more so you're actually the one compounding, or you're looking at medication profiles or answering disease state questions and medication questions with nursing. So from there, I'll see if anybody has any questions.
All right, here's one question. Do most students apply for PharmD already have tech training and experience, or are these career paths completely separate?
I would say yes. The majority of people that are applying for pharmacy school have already worked in a pharmacy in some aspect, or worked in the field of pharmacy in some aspect. When I was in school, I can remember there was only one person in our class that didn't have any pharmacy experience. They had healthcare experience, but no pharmacy experience. So I would say it would be very rare for a student to go into the college framework of becoming a pharmacist without having that technician experience ahead of time.
Thank you so much for that answer. I guess another question is, what is some advice that you would tell a young person who would be interested in pursuing a career in pharmacy, or really any other STEM field at this point? So these might be 7th and 8th graders, or maybe even some high schoolers. So what advice would you give them if they were interested in pursuing a career in pharmacy?
Well, I'm trying to think what I did. I honestly just started asking questions, and luckily I had a family friend that he actually owned the Ziegler Pharmacy where I worked, so I had a lot of interaction with him. So when I thought I might be interested in the healthcare realm, he was really the one that kind of pushed me towards pharmacy and gave me a lot of insight and kind of mentorship in that pathway. So if you're interested, my advice would be to really try to figure out what exactly is it that you're interested in as far as pharmacy goes, and again, just start asking questions. And feel free, you have my information here. You can call or email me at any time. I'm happy to answer any questions that the students have, just to kind of help guide you. I mean, pharmacy, again, it's changed a lot since I even started. I mean, I've been a pharmacist for 10 years, and it's just going to continue to evolve. So.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Bells.
Mm-hmm.
This was a great presentation, and we really, really appreciate you taking the time out today.
Yeah.
We hope you have a wonderful day.
Well, I have one last thing, I just want to see how many people will get this question correct. So I'm going to skip to the next. Do you think this is candy or medicine? Or which one do you think is candy and which one do you think is medicine?
I would say the one on our right is candy and the one on the left is medicine.
This one's candy and this one's medicine?
Yes, that's what I think.
I believe you are correct. Good
Yay!
job. Here's one more.
Same
Somebody-
thing. One on the right looks like jelly beans.
Good
The one on the
job.
left is much more uniform. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Good job. Oh, I do have one more. Okay. And then I think that's it.
Yeah. Again, the one on the right is the candy.
Oh, how about this one?
Oh my.
Give up.
Yeah.
The candy on the left. Fruit
This-
snacks. Okay.
Yep. It was fruit snacks versus vitamins. But that's
Wow.
all I got.
That was so fun. Thank you so much, Dr. Bells.
Yes. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye. Miss LaDonna Morales is a licensed social worker and is a member of the Division of Adolescent and Transition Medicine at Cincinnati Children's. Her presentation today is entitled Social Workers Change the World, an Introduction to Social Work. Mr. Morales?
Well, hello, everyone. My name is LaDonna Morales. I am so excited to be here today and to talk with you about the field of social work. There's just so much I want to share with you. Social workers, we make a difference in the lives of others. So I'm really excited to share with you specifically what we do. So I am a licensed social worker. I'm actually a licensed independent social worker, and I have my master's degree in social work. I am a social work care manager here at the Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And my background is in child protective services. I've also worked in foster care and training coordination for the state of Ohio. My greatest job and desire is to work with kids with special needs, and I've done that work for over 20 years. I wear a lot of hats. I'm a mom and a wife. I am a daughter and an auntie and a sister, but I'm also an advocate and a social worker. So let's get started. I have a couple of questions, and I'd like you to use the chat box. And the first one is, what have you heard about social work? Have you ever had to work with a social worker? And then finally, when you hear the word social work, what comes to mind?
So in the chat, we have that social workers are helpers.
Yes, this is true. What else have you heard?
Also that social workers help people connect to resources in the community.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Working with people who need help.
Okay, all right. So all of those are true. That's what social work does. And you all were very kind, because a lot of times when people hear the word social work, they don't always associate that with positivity. So I want to talk to you about that a little bit. So on the side, it says label jars, not people. So I wanted to start off with some negative stereotypes about social work. Have you ever heard someone say that social workers only work with the poor or disadvantaged people or folks that are on welfare? Well, we know that that's not true. Social workers work with all individuals of all social economic backgrounds. How about anyone can be a social worker, or it just takes a special person to be a social worker? Well, I believe it does take a special person to be a social worker. But there is a lot of education and work that you have to do to become a social worker. And then, have you ever heard someone say, well, social workers, they must lead perfect lives or boring lives? Well, I'm going to tell you that's not true. I live a very exciting life as a social worker. And then this is what I've heard some people say. Social workers take children away from parents. I would like to dispel that myth. That's not true. We actually work extremely hard to keep children and families together. We do everything in our power to make sure that we keep that family relationship together. So, who are we, social work defined? Well, according to the National Association of Social Workers, social work is a profession devoted to helping people function the best way that they can. It is the professional activity of helping individuals, groups of people, communities enhance and restore their capacity for social functioning and creating societal conditions. So what do we do as social workers? Well, social workers help all backgrounds address whatever their psychosocial services and needs are. We help individuals who are just really struggling, face incidents of disability, if they're unemployed or homeless, if they're having issues with substance abuse, if they have a life-threatening disease and they need additional support. It is my thought that at some point, everyone will need a social worker. So social work continued. Social workers help, as I said before, individuals overcome very difficult challenges within their life, such as poverty and discrimination and loss and mental illness, addiction and physical illness, divorce, and so much more. What you see before you is a diagram of equality and equity. And what I'd like you to do is unmute yourself. And then if you look to your left, what do you see? Tell me what you see when you see these three people. What are they doing?
They all have access to the same box.
Yes.
Same size box.
But in having access to the same box, are they all able to watch this game? It appears to be that there is a game that's going on and each one really wants to see it. However, even though everyone has received the same box, are they able to watch the game?
No.
Right. So if we look on the right-hand side, we know that, well, let's go back to the left-hand side. If you look at the left-hand side, you're able to tell that just because each one received equal boxes, that does not still meet their need. However, what equity means, and we'll talk about it a little bit further on the next slide, is that we give people exactly what they need in order to be able to participate in watching the game. So on the right-hand side, you see one individual didn't need a box at all. The second individual, because she was a little smaller, needed 2 boxes. And then the third one, we really just needed to create a ramp for that individual. And as a result, all 3 people can now see the game. So this explains out equity and equality a little bit more. So if you look on the left-hand side, equity is the quality of being fair and impartial. That's being just and making decisions considering the individual's needs. While equality, while still very good and important, is the state of quality of being equal. It involves treating every individual in the same manner, and it also does not consider the needs and requirements of the individual. It's so important that we look at the needs of each individual so that we make sure that we give them what they need in order to be successful. So where do we work with people? Social workers work in multi-practices. Did you know that social workers can work in politics? We also not only work in the hospital, but we can work in the school setting. We work with individuals with disabilities. We can do so much more. But what are the central traits of a successful social worker? Well, I'll just tell you a few. One is that you have to be empathetic, caring, and understanding. It's important that you practice patience because you'll be working with a lot of people that will share their concerns and problems, and you need to be able to be patient with them. Social workers need to be dependable and honest and trustworthy. Also, organized. I'd like to talk a little bit about being organized because in social work, we were always taught, if you do not document it, it did not happen. And social workers also go to court. So you have to make sure that you document everything, because in the court world, if it's not documented, it didn't occur. The other is you have to be a great listener and be objective and be able to make informed decisions. And then also try and be persistent and flexible, resilient, and driven. So what do social workers value? Social workers work off of the Code of Ethics. And when we're looking at the Code of Ethics, we look at service to others, our ability to help those that are in need. We look at social justice. So any injustices of the world, we work to address those. We look at dignity and worth of every individual and the importance of relationships. We understand that no one person lives in a vacuum all by themselves or on an island all by themselves. And so we work to enhance relationships and natural supports around individuals. And then integrity. We work to be as trustworthy as possible, and we have ethical principles. And then competency. We always work within our scope of practice. So what types of people will social workers work with? What do you think? What types of people do social workers work with?
I think they work with all different types of people. There's not one type.
And I think you're right. So let's talk about it a little bit. And I mentioned it previously, but we are able to work with, as you see this picture of the entire world, all people. People with disabilities, children and families, the elderly, individuals with mental health issues, individuals who are homeless and who have acute, chronic, or terminal illnesses. That's one of the things that I like about social work, is because it's so broad and you have the ability to work with so many different populations. So what is a social work care manager? At the beginning, I told you that I was a social work care manager for Cincinnati Children's. And so I want to talk a little bit about what I do here at Children's Hospital. Social work care managers are a part of the medical team. We serve as the accountable point of contact. And really what that means is that we're the initial individuals that the patient and family can call on if they need to talk with someone within the medical team, say they're having problems reaching someone. We help them connect with anyone within the hospital. We work with them on creating patient-specific goals, and then we coordinate those services. We help families solve issues that really just get in the way of patients' health and their comfort. And then we do this intensively. We're able to take as much time as the patient and family needs to make sure that we're addressing all of their issues. And we do this in a targeted amount of time. We typically work with our patients who are multi-complexed, either psychosocially or medically. So through the eyes of a social work care manager, typically the patients that we work with are considered the top 3% of our most chronically complex families. So they're having issues such as non-compliance with medical recommendations. Maybe they're not attending their appointments. They need a little help with that. They're high risk, or maybe they use the ED a lot. They come to the emergency room a lot, or they're hospitalized a lot. Social workers will then get involved to begin to work to determine what are the social determinants of health that may get in the way of them being able to reach their overall needs. And again, we do this by developing a case plan and really working hard with the medical team to meet the needs of the patient and family. We work as advocates for patients and families. So social work, let's talk a little bit more about social work. Social work is one of the fastest growing careers in the United States. According to the U.S. Department of Labor Bureau and Labor Statistics, there are 650 social work jobs, or there were 650,000 social work jobs in 2014. And the profession is growing by leaps and bounds. The median income, annual income for a social worker is $50,470. So what I'll say is that typically social workers do not make a lot of money unless you work in a hospital setting. Did you know that 80% of social workers are female? So that means the other 20% are male. So what are the requirements of a social worker? Well, one, the practice of social work requires knowledge about human development and behavior, social, economic, and cultural institutions, and how all of these work and interact with each other. And then it requires education. So social workers must have no less than a bachelor's degree. And usually you will get your bachelor's degree in social work. And then I always tell students who are really thinking about going into the field of social work that if you do, you really want to consider getting your license. And we'll talk a little bit more about the different types of license that you can get in social work. But in getting your license, one requires that you get your clinical supervision, and there's a requirement of 150 hours that you would obtain within a 2-year period. And then if you're really excited with excelling with your social work licensure, you can go on and obtain special license. And we'll talk about that as well. And then in social work, it is a requirement that we have continuing education. So every 2 years, you have to complete 30 hours worth of classes in education, and then 3 additional hours of ethics. So here are the different types of social work licensures. The first is an LSW, which stands for Licensed Social Worker. That requires your bachelor's degree and successful completion of the examination. An LISW is a licensed independent social worker. This requires you to have your master's degree. And remember when I was talking about the certification, you need 150 supervision hours. This is when those clinical hours would come into play. And that's over a 2-year period of time. And then successful completion of your clinical or advanced standing exam. And then the LISW is a licensed independent social worker supervision, which requires completion of a 9-hour course on supervision. So in social work, because social workers help so many different people, it is important to understand that you've got to do some self-care. So on this slide, it talks about self-care isn't about self-indulgence. It's about self-preservation by Audre Lorde. So you got to take care of yourself. So you must eat healthy and drink plenty of water, really know what your limits are, address one problem at a time, always have and do positive self-talk, and then have a supportive system, either in your family, on your job, but it's important to have a supportive system. And work-life balance. It's important to, when you're at work, give 150%. And then when it's time to leave, be able to shut it off so that you can enjoy your life. And then understand that you're not a superhero. I remember when I first started working, I would imagine that I was a superhero and I was going to just change the world. I do believe that social workers can change the world, but we do it one patient at a time. So determining whether or not social work is right for you. One, I usually tell students to think about, does the NSA values match your own? And the NSAW stands for the National Association for Social Work. So does those values match what your values are? Do you enjoy empowering people? One thing I like to say is that social workers are definitely in it for the outcome, not necessarily the income. Now, don't get me wrong, we know income is important because you still have to pay the bills. But in helping people, we want to make a difference. So that outcome is, you have to be passionate about affecting change in individuals and helping individuals get to their full potential. Social work contribute to all levels of society, and we provide the majority of all America's mental health services. We make the hard decisions. And then one thing I want you to remember is that we have men social workers as well. So this is a case study of Lisa. And Lisa's 15 years of age, and I just wanted to go over this really briefly. So you're a social worker and you're working in a school setting, and Lisa comes to you and she discloses that she has not ate in the last 3 days. You have heard from the teachers that Lisa has been sleeping in class and just not as involved as she should be, and that she looks really tired. She reports to you that the family's gas and electric is due to be discontinued. What I'd like you to do is unmute yourself and answer this question for me. How would you help Lisa and her family?
First, I would buy Lisa some lunch.
Okay.
Needs to eat. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Right now.
We need to give Lisa some energy.
Yeah.
Anything else you would do?
Well, I'm sure that social workers have a way of working with the gas and electric company to work on a bill payment plan.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you already know. So what social workers would do is, one, we'd make sure Lisa had something to eat. We want to get her energy up. We'd also ask additional questions to find out exactly what is going on in the home and how we can best help them. Regarding, we want to talk with maybe Lisa's parents to find out the extent of the issues within the home. We definitely can work with connecting Lisa and her family with community resources like Duke Energy, some of the places out in the community. The Community Action Agency helps a lot of families who are in need or have issues with their gas and electric. We'd also want to think about connecting the family with Job and Family Services to see if they qualify for any benefits. And giving Lisa information about food pantries within the area. And so much more, depending on what additional information we determine or find out from Lisa and her family. So this is kind of the end of the presentation, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about mental health issues. And I'm starting off with, we care about you. You're not alone. We're in a time now where there's so much uncertainty with the pandemic and COVID. And so I always like to talk to students about mental health and the importance of just reaching out if you need someone to talk to. So what I've left is several resources: National Crisis Hotline, Community Crisis hotline if you just need to talk to someone. If you're feeling a little down, if you don't feel like you could talk to a grown-up or a friend, there's places and individuals that you can call and you can get help. And for those individuals who don't like to pick up the phone anymore, there's a crisis text line. So you can text for HOPE to 741-741. We just want you to know that if you're feeling down, depressed, or just in need to talk to anyone, we're here to help you. That's exactly what social workers do. So we're at the end of the presentation, and I just wanted to ask, does anyone have any specific questions in regarding to social work?
All right, there is a question in the chat, and I'll read that.
Thank you.
Does an LISWS is an LISWS a supervisor of social workers, or do you supervise patients?
So actually you can do both. You can, with an LISWS, you can supervise a group of social workers, you can manage a caseload of patients, you can actually supervise social workers with an LISW. The difference between the LISW and the LISWS, with the supervision licensure, you can also do supervision hours. So remember when we were talking about the clinical hours that you have to get, the 150 hours that's needed in order to get your LISW? Well, an LISWS, a social worker that's licensed with their licensed independent social worker -- supervision, can actually provide that training.
Thank you so much. So one last question, Ms. Morales, if a student is really thinking about pursuing a career in social work, and this could be, you know, people who in 7th or 8th grade could be watching this, or even people in high school, what advice would you give them right now if they're thinking about social work as an option?
So my initial advice would be do you know any social workers now that you can go and talk to and ask questions about the work that they do? As we talked about, there are so many different avenues of social work that you can go into. And it's helpful to kind of think about, like, if you want to do social work, what do you want to, like, what population would you like to work with? And then what would you like to do? Also, you can go online, and I actually provided some additional resources. So you can go to the National Association for Social Workers. That's the NASW that I mentioned previously. And you can find out so much information about social work. There is a whole list of places that you can look. Another great place to look is YouTube. Surprisingly, you can put in introduction to social work, and you'll find so many different videos about social work. You can also just do research through your Google to find out information about social work. But I've left you these resources. I would encourage that you look through them and think more broadly about exactly what you want to do and what population that you want to work with, because you may want to help people, but you've got to kind of figure out, like, in what aspect you would like to do that.
Thank you so much. One of our students on here, Madison, has a question. Do you have any stories that made you love your job even more? If so, can you tell us one, please?
Oh gosh, Madison, I'll just say that I remember working with one of my patients who was 19 years of age, and he had developmental delays and needed a lot of support, and he had the help of his siblings, but I think the care was becoming a little bit more difficult for the siblings to handle. So I was able to help him find placement in the community in a group home setting. And he was able to connect with the caregivers within the group home and still have close contact with his siblings. And today he's thriving, he's doing really well. I still get updates about how he's progressing. His siblings still come to spend time with them on a weekly basis. And so what I learned from those experiences is that we can definitely make change even in difficult situations.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? All right. Well, if not, thank you so much, Ms. Morales, for a wonderful presentation again this year. And we'll be contacting you for next year too, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a great day.